Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, YouTubers out there in YouTube land. This is G Sharp Jams with another edition of FX Studio 2, coming to you from the beautiful downtown Charlotte, North Carolina area. Today we're going to take a look at one thing in particular, and that's adding extra I/O to your existing system for your studio. Now, before you turn off the video and say, hey, I already know how to do that, I want you to stick around because I'm going to talk about something very, very important and what you need to look for specifically before you purchase that gear. These are common mistakes that a lot of people make, and they end up having to return the gear because they realize they can't use it. So stick around. I'll be right back, heading back to the studio, and we'll get to it. Hello, YouTube. So we are back in the studio. As you can see, I've taken off the corporate American 9-to-5 garb. I've gotten a bit more comfortable here in my studio garb. So let's go ahead and get started on that video that I promised you about as far as audio interfaces and adding extra I/O to your existing system. Now, as you can see behind me, I'm just about done rewiring my studio. I've been doing that for about a week now. Taking my time, again, making sure I get everything right. A few changes that I want to make there. Take some time. Not going to get into all of that. That's a whole nother video, a whole nother conversation. But anyway, you can see the clutter is just about gone now. I'm getting there. And the reason why I wanted to do this video for you is because actually, while I was rewiring this piece that you can see right behind me here, the Ferrofish Pulse 16, that's when it came to my mind that of something that I experienced a long time ago when I made the switch to the digital world and then coming out of digital and going into analog and using my analog gear into my system and getting the whole thing connected. And I ran into a lot of problems understanding how to connect this stuff. And you have ADAT, you have MADI, you have all these different types of connections that are out there, and it was very, very confusing. Now, I'm not going to get into the difference between ADAT and MADI and all the other ones that are out there, but I am going to get into what you need to be careful about when you purchase something, because I'll tell you, I purchased two audio interfaces thinking I was going to be able to link them up together, only to find out after searching and searching on the back of this thing, well, where's the connection? How come this isn't working out? That I had the wrong two pieces to be able to do that. So it's important to understand what you're getting with an audio interface and a second audio interface, or an audio interface and some type of device like the Ferrofish Pulse 16 here, which is an excellent piece of gear. Let me tell you something. I love this thing. I've been using it for a while. The sound quality that you get out of it is absolutely fantastic for the price that you pay for it, as compared to some of the other more expensive pieces of gear that are out there. So if you're considering something where you need some extra I/O, I strongly consider, where's my finger? There it is. I strongly consider taking a look at that Ferrofish Pulse 16. But anyway, here's the gist of what I'm trying to get to. If you want to add extra I/O to your system because you've now accumulated so much outboard gear and you've got to hook that outboard gear up into your system so that it can be read by your DAW, you're going to need another audio interface or something like the Pulse 16 to get that done. So, if that's you, and this is something that you're trying to do, here's something very important that you need to keep in mind. Number one, you have the original audio interface, and let's say, for instance, it's the Focusrite 1820i, I believe, which has a ton of I/O. It has 8 preamps. It has 20 outputs, I believe, on the back of it, or something, or 10 outputs on the back of it, something like that. And then you buy a second piece of gear and you say, okay, I'm going to get an ADAT cable. And I'm going to take the outputs of that ADAT cable and put it to the inputs of the other device that I have, and now I have extra I/O. Well, here's where the problem comes in, and this is what you have to make sure of. And I'll give you a for instance. On the back of your audio interface, you're going to see ADAT ins and outs. You're going to see word clock, and you may only see word clock in, you may only see word clock out, or you may see word clock in and out. As far as ADAT is concerned, you may only see ADAT in, or you may only see ADAT out, or you may see ADAT in and out, and you may see two pairs of ADAT in and out. What you need to be sure of is if you're going to connect two devices, one of them has to have an ADAT in, the other one has to have an ADAT out. If you get two pieces of gear and they both only have ADAT outs, you cannot connect the two. There has to be an in on one and an out on the other. The same thing with word clock. If you buy one piece of gear and it has word clock in, and the second piece of gear has word clock in only but no word clock out, you cannot use the two together. There has to be a word clock in going to a word clock out. That's the way it's done. And believe me, I know because I've done it. And I had to return the gear only after spending hours and hours and days of batting my head and trying to figure out what in the world is going on. How come I'm not getting the extra IO that's showing up in my door, and I'm not able to do what I wanted to do. And then I realized, wait a minute, I need this second ADAT, this second piece of gear to have an ADAT out as opposed to the first piece of gear that has an ADAT in. Now let me give you an example. I'm going to cheat a little bit here because I've actually got it on my screen behind me. With the Focusrite 1820, you have two ADAT outs. That's it. Two ADAT outs. And excuse me, that's not the Focusrite 1820. That's the Focusrite Octopre. Let me clear that up. Make that perfectly clear. I wasn't referring to the 1820. That's the Focusrite Octopre. If you buy a Focusrite Octopre, it has two ADAT outs. There are no ADAT ins on it. But it does have a word clock in and a word clock out, which is fantastic. But with only two ADAT outs, you have to understand that the only thing that this piece of gear is going to do is give you the ability to connect it to something that has an ADAT in, which means you're taking the audio that's coming out of that Octopre and feeding it via that ADAT cable to something that has an ADAT in. If, for instance, you purchased something that had an ADAT out but no ADAT in, and then you said, okay, I'm going to buy this other audio interface, it's got ADAT on it, but you don't look and make sure that it's got an ADAT out as compared to the ADAT in on the other piece, or vice versa, you're going to get that piece ahead and you're going to sit there and say, how in the world did I do that? I just wasted my money. And then you're going to have to send it back. You're going to have to wait for them to take a look at it and make sure it's the right piece of gear, that you didn't ruin it. And then they'll finally refund your money, or they'll give you a store credit. And who wants to go through all of that? I've been there. I've done it. And I never want to do it again. I want to do my research first to make sure that I'm getting what I need to get. Now, if you already have an audio interface and you want to add extra I/O to your system, go with this thing right here, this Ferrofish Pulse 16. It has two sets of ADAT ins and outs, and it has word clock. Perfect. It's going to solve all your problems. You don't have to worry about buying the wrong piece of gear, and it's only about $1,100, as opposed to other pieces like this that have AD conversion built in as well, where you're going to pay upwards of $3,000 to $4,000. And let me tell you, I was on the verge of doing that a while back, and I am so glad I only spent the $1,100 on this thing, because for $1,100, the AD conversion in this thing is outstanding. The sound that you get out of it is outstanding, and it gets the job done. That's just a quick one for today because, again, like I said, it wasn't one of the videos that I had planned, but while I was rewiring my studio, I thought about many, many moons ago when I was going through this situation and couldn't figure out what I was doing wrong, and finally realized I have one of the wrong pieces of equipment. I can't possibly do this. So after doing some research, I ended up buying this Pulse 16, and it solved everything. Again, Just a quick one for today. Just wanted to pass that along to you in case it's something you're considering doing, something that you need some extra I/O in your studio, or if you've already made the purchase and you're batting your head trying to figure out why this isn't working and what am I doing wrong, now you know. And that, my friends, is audio engineering. Remember, stay creative, keep creating. Remember to think outside of the box because there are no rules in this game. You can do whatever you want to do as long as it sounds right. Until next time, G Sharp Jams out. Everybody have a great rest of your day.